Jeremy, welcome to the Creative Ops Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us for this week's episode. We're going to start like we start every episode. What is your definition of creative operations?
Creative operations is a mix of people, process, and technology that help bring story to life and help breathe oxygen into what has been a very fractured process for many decades and to bring modernity to that corner. It's an exciting time for creative operations as we define what it is.
Why do you think the creative process has been fractured and why do we need to fix it?
First of all, when you're developing creative, you're almost always starting from a new concept, right? You're inventing something based on a brief. You're trying to do a job. So you're trying to build a new creative look. You're trying to build a new brand. You're trying to build a new campaign. You're trying to build a new template for something. And you're starting from sometimes from nothing, from a brief that doesn't come from a person who has a creative background, but you're asking that to be done by a person who's specialized in creative storytelling, right? And there's this interpretation layer that has to happen. And the organizations that I've been in, different parts of organizations, that interpretation layer. So what I want versus what I get is the first point of fracture, right? So how do I know that I'm going to get back what I want, right? And then you've got an immense amount of talent bound up in our creative talent inside of organizations. But creative is not always a linear process, right? Expressing themselves and finding the right solutions. It doesn't always follow a very time bound and linear process. But that doesn't mean that we can't bring operational focus to it, that we can't create the conditions for creative to be successful. But we haven't put those conditions in place. What has been done, and I'm speaking a little bit generally here, Nish, is we've said it's the creative. So we just don't bother them. Just give them the brief and they'll come back when it's done. Or we'll hire a different agency to do the work, or we'll change the talent there, right? And so we haven't really established the conditions of success. And at the same time, we've turned up the output that we require from a creative perspective. So we've said we need story, we need it to be better, we need it to be sharper and more channel focused. Oh, and by the way, we need 20 times the amount of it, but we still need you to be your creative best self. And so our field has come into focus to say, how can we help? How can we aid this process? How can we make it smoother for people? How can we take data in the briefing process? How can we make it more transparent for folks? How can we make it less fractured? There's this classical tension between marketing and creative departments. Why? It's simply about communication. And I think for us, in creative operations, those of us who find the joy of unlocking a brief and helping a creative express their vision for something that is on brief, like creatives go way off brief sometimes, and it's not the appropriate way to answer a brief, right? The creatives aren't always right, but unlocking that ability to tell the right story at the right time for the right action on behalf of a brand or a product or a customer, that's magic to a creative operations person. And so trying to find ways through relationship, people, process, like doing the right things at the right time with the right communication vehicles, and technology, frankly, putting this into more pleasant user experiences are really foundational, I think, to where companies of scale need to go in order to meet the moment on the other side, which is we're all seeing messages every day, hundreds, thousands of times a day. And how do we stand out in those marketplaces?